Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes was born in 1547 in the university town of Henares, close to Madrid. His father, Rodrigo de Cervantes, was a barber surgeon, someone who combined the functions of a conventional barber with the performance of minor surgical operations. Cervantes, therefore, was born into what we might term the middle class. We know relatively little about his early years. The family seems to have moved about Spain, living at one time in Sevilla, where Cervantes may have attended the Jesuit school before settling in Madrid in 1566. Our first evidence for him as a writer comes in a literary compilation published in 1569 by the director of a humanist academy in Madrid, Lopez de Hoyos. In the preface, he mentions Cervantes as our dear and beloved pupil and includes some poems by him dedicated to the memory of the recently deceased Queen Isabel de Valois. This is evidence that although Cervantes did not attend university, he did receive, even for a brief period, something like a third-level education. In December of that same year, we find him in Italy, a member of the household of one of the great Roman cardinals. We do not know why or how he made this move, and a 1569 warrant for the arrest of one Miguel de Cervantes, resident in Madrid, for killing a man in a sword fight may or may not refer to the future author. In 1570, Cervantes enlisted in the Spanish army. Much of Italy was then a Spanish possession, and in the following year took part in the naval battle of Lepanto. This was a decisive defeat for the mighty navy of the expanding Ottoman Empire, but Cervantes sustained a wound which permanently paralyzed his left hand. His frequent references to this event in his writings clearly indicate that he was very proud of his participation in this historic battle. He spent the next 4 years on campaign around the Mediterranean, taking part in the Spanish expeditions to Navarino and Tunis. He was returning with his brother, who was also a soldier, to Spain in 1575 when their ship, the Soul, was seized by Algerian corsairs, and he spent the next 5 years as a captive in Algiers. He was placed with the gentlemen prisoners who were not forced to work, and a ransom was demanded for his return. The letters of recommendation he carried with him from Don John of Austria, illegitimate brother of the King of Spain and supreme commander of her armies, had led his captors to imagine that he was a person of some status. The ruler of Algiers was a man noted for his cruelty, but Cervantes, who was brought before him on several occasions for organizing escape bids, seems to have shown the kind of courage that commanded his respect and was let off without punishment. Eventually, his family, assisted by the Trinitarian friars, managed to raise enough money to pay his ransom, and he returned to Spain in 1580. He managed to get some work in the diplomatic service and was sent on a mission to Oran, returning via Portugal, which had just been annexed by Spain. Thereafter, he tried unsuccessfully to establish himself as a playwright in Madrid, but had more luck with the publication in 1585 of his first piece of prose fiction, La Galatea, a pastoral romance of the kind much in vogue throughout Europe at that time. The previous year, he had an illegitimate daughter, Isabel, by Rojas, and had married Salazar. Unable to make a living as a writer, he eventually found employment as a commissary for the armada which Philip II of Spain was planning to send against England. He was based in Sevilla and requisitioned supplies, corn, wine and oil from the towns and villages of Andalusia. He was excommunicated twice for requisitioning wheat belonging to the Cathedral chapter of Sevilla and imprisoned at Del Rio, accused of having exceeded his authority. In 1590, he applied unsuccessfully for a government post in the New World. Between 1594 and 97, he was a tax collector in Granada, and in the latter year was imprisoned for 7 months in Sevilla for mismanagement of his accounts. He wrote some poems during this period which commented sardonically on contemporary events such as Earl of Essex sack in 1596 and the death in 1598 of Philip II. In 1604, he moved to Valladolid, then the seat of the royal court, where he was responsible for maintaining a large household consisting of his wife, his illegitimate daughter, 2 of his sisters and a niece. Don Quixote Part 1 appeared in January 1605, and 2 years later, following the court, he moved to Madrid, where he was to spend the rest of his life. There were years of intense literary activity, bearing fruit in the publication in 1613 of the Exemplary Novels, a collection of 12 moral tales, and in the following year of the long poem reviewing the state of poetry, The Journey to Parnassus, Part 2 of Don Quixote, and a collection of 8 plays and 8 interludes, some of them based on his experiences as a captive in Algiers, appeared in 1615. Throughout this period, Cervantes frequented the literary academies, rather like writers' clubs, of the capital, and became a member of the fashionable religious confraternity, the Slaves of the Most Blessed Sacrament, and of the Third Order of St. Francis. He had become nationally and internationally respected, particularly because of the translations into English and French of Don Quixote, but never reaped the financial rewards that such success might have been expected to bring with it. He died on the 22nd April 1616, within days of Shakespeare, and was buried in the habit of Franciscan tertiary. His last major work, a Christian romance entitled The Labours of Persiles and Sigismunda, was published posthumously in 1617.